I think it's unfortunate that the media continues to describe this individual as a whistleblower, and honorific that this individual most certainly does not deserve. A partisan hit job does not make you a whistleblower just because you go through the Whistleblower Protection Act.
Well, first of all, how do you know that this is a partisan hit job, and how do you know that this is not a whistleblower? In fact, under DNI, the Department of National Intelligence rules, well, you know what? Let's go back this, and we're going to jump around a little bit because I didn't know you were going to go here. Here is the comment from the DNI, the acting DNI before Congress, Joe McGuire, in his testimony this week. Take a look.
I believe that the whistleblower and the Inspector General have acted in good faith throughout. I have every reason to believe that they have done everything by the book and followed the law.
That is the Director of National Intelligence, Joe McGuire, a lifetime servant of this country, a Navy SEAL. He says that the whistleblower was acting in good faith and acting by the book. On what basis do you say that this was a partisan hit job?
First of all, if you read the 7-page little Nancy Drew novel that the whistleblower put together, it drips with condescension, righteous indignation, and contempt for the president.
Why did President Trump use his private attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and as we just reported, 2 other private lawyers to try to dig up dirt from the Ukrainian government on Joe Biden rather than going through his State Department?
First of all, and most importantly, when we keep talking about, quote, digging up dirt, it's an interesting choice of words. One of 2 things is true, Chris. Either the Ukrainian government or people associated with it possess real and actual knowledge of corrupt dealings by the Biden family, or they don't. If they do, is it not in the interest of all Americans to know what that is?
We're going to get to what the Bidens in a minute, but I've asked you a specific question. I'd like a specific answer. The president has the State Department. He's got the CIA. He's got the Pentagon. He's got a number of other agencies. Why did he use 3 private lawyers to get information on Biden from the Ukrainian government rather than go through all of the agencies of his government?
2 different points. Number 1.
How about answering my question?
John Durham, as you know.
Wait a minute. John Durham is investigating something completely different. Stephen, I'm asking you a direct question. Why did the president use private attorneys rather than go to the State Department? If you don't know, that's an acceptable answer, but let's not talk about John Durham, who's investigating the Trump investigation.
There's 2 issues that were brought up on the phone call.
I'm not asking 2 issues. Why did he do it?
Chris, I understand that you have your question. I have my answer. There's 2 issues that were brought up on the phone call.
You have your non-answer at this point.
There were 2 issues brought up on the phone call. One was Ukrainian knowledge about the nature of the collusion investigation that has inflicted so much pain and damage in our country. My point is that the Attorney General has appointed somebody from the Justice Department to look into that issue. Then there's the additional matter of Ukrainian corruption, which Giuliani, among others, are looking at. And it is proper and natural for, frankly, anybody concerned about the future of Ukraine and the United States to want to know information about corrupt dealings. What I find astonishing, Chris, is that the people that are so enraged about an effort to find any true and actual knowledge of foreign corrupt dealings related to Ukraine are the same ones who've been using the foreign-produced dossier by a British spy to put this country through unending political turmoil.
I'm simply asking a question as to why.
Is Adam Schiff guilty of interfering in our election?
I'm simply asking you a question as to why the president didn't use his government. You apparently are not going to answer that. In May, as part of a regular interagency process, in May, 2 months before he withheld the aid, the Pentagon certified to Congress, a formal process certified to Congress after a rigorous process and after consultation with the State Department that Ukraine had made dramatic progress in fighting corruption and that the aid should be released. Why did the president, if the argument is corruption, why did the president go against his own Pentagon and his own State Department?
Chris, I don't understand how you can ask that question while at the same time admonishing the president for wanting to get to the bottom of perhaps one of the biggest corruption scandals concerning Ukraine in the last few years.
I'm not admonishing anybody. I'm simply asking, why did he go?
No, Chris.
I mean, with all due respect, this is an exercise in obfuscation. Why did the president go against his own Pentagon and State Department?
There's a tone of judgment in all of your questions. So yes, you are admonishing, and I can't speak to.
No, that's judgment on your part.
And the American people in 2016 said we want a completely new direction for our country. They elected new lawmakers and they elected a new president to deliver that direction. He's the sole elected person in the executive branch. And yet...
Well, that's not true. Actually, you got the vice president as well.
Yes. And all executive power is vested in the president. But there are deep state operatives who for 3 years have done nothing but tried to leak, undermine, hurt, and harm the ability of this president to institute this change. Do we want to be governed by an unelected bureaucracy or by a democratically elected president? That is the sole issue facing the American people.
The only point I would make, and I have to move on, is that in 2018, the American people elected a Democratic House. So they are a co-equal branch of government. Stephen, thank you.
This is Stephen Miller unraveling while being pressed by Fox News' Chris Wallace about Trump's whistleblower scandal. And that's because, first and foremost, there is nothing to the Trump administration's rebuttal to the whistleblower complaint. Stephen Miller's only tactic is to say that Trump isn't corrupt, Biden is corrupt. And then when Chris Wallace corrects him that there's no evidence of corruption by Biden, Miller pivots to how the media is corrupt. And he just keeps going back and forth, pointing to Biden and the media in a circle, because the point here is not to actually unearth facts or for the White House to expose some grand corruption scandal. It's to sow doubt, to malign the Democratic frontrunner to the advantage of Donald Trump. That's it. And we've seen this before, where the White House will level completely baseless accusations, not because they're looking to uncover a truth, but because all it takes is the accusation. People believed that Barack Obama wasn't an American citizen because the Trump campaign said it. People believed that millions of undocumented immigrants voted in 2016 because the Trump campaign said it. People believed that Hillary Clinton's email scandal was worse than Watergate because the Trump campaign said it. All of these things were completely false, but again, accuracy was never the point. Now, Stephen Miller's approach is multi-pronged here, but Chris Wallace shuts down every single talking point. First, Miller tries to discredit the whistleblower, claiming that he or she is a partisan. Now, I should remind you that no one knows the identity of the whistleblower, so the fact that Miller is already claiming that they're partisan is just proof that he was going to call them partisan regardless of their identity. It could be a paper bag, and Stephen Miller in the White House would claim that this is no ordinary paper bag. This paper bag is being propped up by the Clinton campaign. I mean, even Trump's own director of national intelligence asserted that the whistleblower complaint was credible and urgent, and he's a Trump appointee. It's almost like, and bear with me here, the whistleblower isn't the partisan one. Miller then claims that because the whistleblower complaint drips with condescension, that it's lost all credibility. Yeah, because the whistleblower uncovering Trump's quid pro quo wherein he attempts to conspire with a foreign government to interfere in our election should have shown a little more respect to President Donald Trump. Got it. Chris Wallace then goes on to ask Miller why Giuliani was unilaterally deputized to uncover what the White House is claiming is the biggest corruption scandal out there, but no one else. Not the FBI, not the CIA, not the State Department. Just Rudy Giuliani up against the so-called worst corruption scandal in history. And Miller goes on to deflect and obfuscate and point every which way, which Chris Wallace himself calls out over and over and over again. But frankly, Miller has no choice but to deflect, given that there's no legitimate excuse as to why Giuliani was the only one to look into this, besides the fact that there was nothing there. If the intelligence community did look into it, there'd be definitive proof that there's nothing there, as we've already learned. But Giuliani wasn't officially working on behalf of the State Department, meaning he was able to circumvent national security protocols that prevent these Banana Republic-style hit jobs from occurring. And so because Giuliani is a partisan hack who's looking only for evidence to support a foregone conclusion, then Trump knows he can trust him to keep up a sham investigation regardless of its legitimacy. The White House is apparently under the impression that if Trump's instance of glaring, outright corruption is going to be investigated, that for some reason it needs to be balanced with an investigation on the other side. But it doesn't work that way. Because as much as the Trump administration has gotten used to them, this isn't a quid pro quo. There is clear evidence that Trump sought to withhold military aid from Ukraine in exchange for the favor of Ukraine investigating Joe Biden, and even clearer evidence that he tried to cover it up. There is, however, no evidence that Joe Biden did anything wrong. The intelligence community acknowledges that there's no evidence. Fox News acknowledges that there's no evidence. In other words, these two things are not the same, and one investigation doesn't depend on the other. So no matter how much Stephen Miller tries to distract everyone by pointing to Joe Biden and the media as the real culprits, that isn't going to change the fact that Donald Trump got caught breaking the law.